This isn't just a podcast. It's a reminder of what makes America stronger isn't a headline or a hashtag.
It's people, from the ones building our homes to the ones rebuilding their lives.
Veterans, tradesmen, neighbors, and volunteers. Real people doing real things.
Here we find common ground first, and then we work on our differences.
This is the Collective Perspective Podcast,
where purpose, people, and progress meet.
I think for the future, narratives will continue to play a huge role, and I would even say it will further increase. Our attention span is reduced. A lot of the complex topics that are out there are too complex for many people to understand, so we need narratives to simplify them and put them into packages that the audience can understand. And we have a lot of noise out there, a lot of information going on. So if you want to cut through with your message, you need to focus not just on your story, but on the narrative you want to build over time. And that's why narratives will continue to be very important and even rise in importance.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Collective Perspective Podcast. Today we're talking about narratives.
I think it might go a little more than just narratives, overall attention span of everybody.
I want to say that it's not necessarily narratives in general, but how and why someone would create a narrative.
Yeah, I could see how some people would want to create a narrative to maybe reduce the amount of time it takes to get the point across or to get the idea across.
Right, and so to do that, there are many different ways. I think the research I was doing says persuade, but I lean more towards manipulate, right? So you could come up with a narrative to get people motivated to go work out. You know, you could say, for example, the fear appeal. Fear appeal is one of them, where you could say, hey, if you don't exercise, you're going to get overweight, and that's going to create you to have heart problems, and you're going to die.
Prematurely die. Yeah, and so you need a hook quick. I think people's attention spans these days, we're so used to having everything at the tip of our fingers in an instant, to where if it takes too long to, say, explain a narrative, people tune out. TLDR, too long, didn't read.
Or, hey, cut to the chase, man. I need, tell me the information. Why are you giving all this detail? But what is the saying? The devil is in the details?
Yes.
Yes. So you need to, I think a lot of times, if you want to be accurate, you need to have those details.
And when you give the Cliff Notes version, you miss a lot of the details, and that's when the framing of the narrative comes into play, and you can be persuaded or manipulated based on knee-jerk emotions.
What we're really talking about, the core of what we're getting to, if you get my drift, is that we're talking about how people can negatively influence you with their narrative that they create. Those type of tactics have names.
And they are used every day by people in our families, at work, at the store, on TV, wherever you go. People are using these tactics all the time.
And here's an example of the first one that I'm going to talk about. It's called the fear of appeal. Technique often highlights risk or dangers, making individuals feel vulnerable. So it's creating an emotion.
Yes, just like in the 80s and maybe even the 90s, a lot of our generation will remember the Say No to Drugs ads with the pan on the stove and the egg. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs.
Did your mom ever make you watch? My mom forced us to watch the after-school specials.
I was never forced to watch those.
She's like, sit down and watch this now. I was like, okay. She must have been reading the TV guide. Oh my God. Who out there remembers the TV guide?
Oh God.
Anyway. So fear appeals is exactly what it says. Fear is appealing. If you're fearing something, then it's gonna create an emotion in you, and that's where the narratives kind of go sideways for me.
And that's how they can drive you to whatever point they're trying to make, or to the side of whatever opinion they're trying to make by using fear.
And that's where our friends manipulate and persuade come in again. If you don't remember, I know you do, Travis, but if you're listening, persuasion is something that benefits both of us. Manipulation benefits the person doing the manipulation. It benefits only one person or party. So if we were talking about fear appeal and you're creating a narrative, then that narrative is directed towards one group or individual or subject matter that you are against, that you're not wanting the narrative to be in favor of that said entity.
So what kind of narrative would be the fear? Would that be, I guess what I'm trying to get at is how is it being framed? Are we getting into the framing of these narratives with fear, or that seems to be a negative type of framing type. That seems to be a negative framing tactic, if you ask me.
Tell me about framing, but I'm referring to the type of framing in narratives, when you create a narrative.
In narratives, framing is all about how you position or present a story. It's the lens you hand to the audience. By choosing what to emphasize, what to leave out, and how to shape the context, you guide how people interpret events. For example, you can frame a challenge as a threat or as an opportunity. Same facts, but a very different takeaway. So framing isn't just telling a story. It's how you invite others to see the story from a particular angle.
I think that's pretty much what we do with an outline, right? We're framing what we want to talk about. We're framing our narrative.
From our perspective.
From our perspective. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that per se. But it all depends on the context, right?
And what the information is and what's actually left out. We try to cover our bases on both pros and cons of the topics that we talk about. However, we do miss some things. So our frame could be a little skewed. But that's where we count on our listeners to chime in and give us some direction.
Well, see, that's the problem I have with narratives, because if a narrative is to simplify, and that's another tactic, if the idea is to frame it to where it only shows one side of the story in a positive light, and maybe, let's say, the person that you're opposing or a group that you're opposing in a negative light, then to me that's kind of lying. You're only framing it to be one-sided,
or to benefit yourself,
and it does nobody any good. I hate to go into when and who, but hey, let's just face it, the media in the United States, they use negative framing all the time. And yeah, let's use the word negative framing, because you could frame something in a positive light.
Yeah.
And a neutral light.
I think the neutral light is going to be the hardest these days, because we appear to be so polarly divided from one side to the other. And being neutral would be the best way to do it. That way people can make their own opinion, good or bad.
That makes me want to talk about the next one, and that's a cognitive bias. But wouldn't you say all of these tactics are cognitive biases in a way?
I think they could be, yeah.
And one of them is labeling. Let's watch the video on labeling. This one's 25 seconds.
What is labeling? It's an extreme form of overgeneralization, in which we attach an unhealthy universal label to ourselves and others. The truth about this cognitive distortion is that humans are way too complex to be described by such a simple descriptor. When we label, we often take one characteristic of a person and apply it to the whole person.
I guess another name would be stereotyping.
Yeah, but you can also label yourself.
Or profiling.
You can say, hey, I am an American, I'm a father, I'm a Christian, I'm this. Those are all labels. But when you say, hey, that guy, I like to use people speeding down the highway, that guy doesn't care about anyone. I just labeled that person into someone that in a negative label. And I and maybe it's just me, but I think I think you can tell a lot of people, we talked about this before, I think you can tell a lot of people about the way they drive and how they treat others on the road. So is my framing or is my labeling incorrect? I would say it's my perspective. But one thing I did notice with the crowded lines at Disneyland this week, that there are also people that walk the same way they drive.
Oh, I bet that to me can be very frustrating because I walk with a purpose, and so does my daughter. Me and her, we walk fairly quickly and we get around pretty quick. When somebody gets in front of us that just kind of slows down or stops, we're like, oh, it's worse than driving in some instances. What
blows my mind is that they just have no cognitive, is cognitive the right word? They have no idea that they're oblivious that you're even there.
They have no situational awareness.
It absolutely blows my mind. Or do I label them as like, that person's just stupid, or that person just only cares about themselves? Because I think that's where my head goes. Like, that person only cares about them, and they don't care about anybody else in their surroundings.
I think at that time in that situation, that would be correct. But that changes constantly, though. I don't think that people stay in that mindset the entire time. I think once they get there, and if you were to say, "Oh, excuse me," "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. I apologize." Sometimes, many times, they'll be apologetic in some way. But on the road, that's a little different.
Not to take the conclusion or the summary of what we're talking about away from us, but what we're doing here and what we're talking about is it creates an emotion. Me being emotional, I make a comment that, hey, that person that drives this way is like this. And based off my emotions, I know in reality, if I wasn't emotional, if I wasn't in that spot, if I'm telling someone else, they would probably be like, man, you can't make that assumption. But I do anyway.
You make that label, you profile them, or you stereotype them as into a group of people who are conceited and only full of themselves, only thinking of themselves.
And I think that's where the next one is very similar to what we're just talking about. It ties right into it, and that is guilt by association.
That's an interesting one. We had a brief discussion about that earlier.
Well, let's talk about it again.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you have a friend that is hanging out with someone else at school, and that friend, or anywhere, bar, school, and that friend breaks into cars and it's into Grand Theft Auto in real life.
Everybody kind of knows that this person is like that.
Then all of a sudden, your son starts hanging out with that person, and your first thing is like, I'm going to go label this person as a bad person. I'm going to automatically think like, okay, what is my son up to? Not my son. It's hypothetical son. What is my son doing? What is he thinking? Does he really want to go out and do that kind of stuff?
Or does this person have other attributes and other traits that make them a better person once you get to know them?
But you see how we're getting emotional about it already.
About the information that's already been framed to us by others.
Now, here's the thing is that guilt by association is commonly used in media. I would say most widely, guilt by association is used in the term of Nazis or somebody that you don't like Genghis Khan, which is in the news recently.
Really?
Did you hear about that?
No. Because that sounds like your framing isn't quite right.
Well, history proves that, unfortunately and unhappily, Jesus Christ has no advantage over Genghis Khan. Because if you are strong enough, ruthless enough, powerful enough, evil will overcome good.
I think that he's not quite right in that. He framed it as good and evil can overcome good. But at the same time, he left out the fact that the Christianity that Jesus Christ preached is still in practice today, whereas Genghis Khan is not. So who really won that?
He's negatively framing Jesus,
Correct.
which is where the problem lies.
In his framing, yes. So person A believes X. Person B is a bad person that also believes X and is more popular or more well known because of their, say, negative impact. Therefore, person A is guilty, is as guilty as person B, even though they only have that one belief in common.
See, the thing is, and the point I wanted to bring up about this and what we talked about earlier is that guilt by association is different than guilty by association. In this context, anyway. What I mean is that the person that is hanging out with the other person that is stealing cars, it is their action that would make them guilty by association, right? So they would have to go out and actually actively participate in
that activity
to actually be guilty, like legally. The friend went out and robbed the car last night. You were at home sleeping and you have an alibi, then you're not guilty of anything.
You just know the person.
You may go back to school and people are like, hey man, did you hear so-and-so stole a car? I bet you he did too. Like that's different.
That gets into slander and libel if they're saying that you're guilty because you're friends with them.
That's like saying, hey, if you believe X and this other bad group believes X, then you're bad. That's the same thing, isn't it? One thing I wanted to say about guilty by association is that Hitler never liked or subscribed this podcast. So unless you want to be like Hitler, you better start hitting that like and subscribe button now.
I see what you did there.
You see what I did there?
So repetition.
Repetition. I've been so intrigued by repetition and what's the other one? Reflective. Hold on. Repetition and hold on. It was in our notes. I think it's important that we discuss both of them because they're so closely connected. Reinforcement. That's what it was.
So yeah, repetition. You know, that's how we learned in school back in the day. If you did something bad, the teacher would make you write, I will not do this 100 times. Repetition over and over and over. Eventually it will sink in and become ingrained or normal. And you'll follow that rule. That's the idea behind repetition. To be a better baseball player, you get out there and you swing the bat and hit the ball, or you practice throwing every day, the same routine, same mechanics over and over and over again. Repetition is what makes you better at what you're doing. I think we need to be cautious though, that because repetition is also a type of practice. A lot of people say practice makes perfect. No, practice doesn't make perfect because you could practice the wrong thing and still not be perfect. Practice makes permanent. When you redo it over and over in one way, it becomes permanent. That's that building that shortcut, that neural pathway, so that it becomes, it's a shortcut to make it easier for you to do something.
It's kind of like riding a bike, swimming, tying your shoes. Right now, my young son, he was all into Velcro shoes, and now he's into adult young men's shoes, and there isn't many options for Velcro anymore.
Until you get older.
So I told him, hey man, you're gonna have to learn how to tie your shoes. Well, he ended up in tears last night because he couldn't tie his shoes. And I said, hey man, it's just like anything else you do. You go to karate, you went out and learned to ride your bike. You could literally stop riding your bike for 15, 20 plus years and still go on that distance of time and still be able to swim, still be able to ride your bike, still be able to tie your shoes. These, like you said, neural pathways. And so, like I told him, and I think what we're leading to is reinforcement. Like, hey, man, you did a great job. Don't be so hard on yourself. Recognize the fact that this repetition is what's going to get you there. You can't expect to get enough repetitions in one evening, right?
It's something that has to be done over and over again.
But there I was reinforcing his repetition. So when it comes to,
You were giving him positive reinforcement and saying, look at the
Right.
goal. So yes, you were reinforcing the action with a positive to make him want to do it. And once he learns it, it'll be a positive outcome for him.
right, and so I think where all these tie into, all of these narratives, what would we say, tricks to narratives, or what would you call them? Hold on a second.
Yeah. Narrative
story.
framing tactics.
Tactics, that's the word we're using, tactics. So all of these tactics that we're talking about create emotion, and they are all tactics to persuade you or manipulate you into doing something they want you to do, or to follow, or to support. So now that we've gone over what tactics for narratives are, we didn't really abide by creating a narrative here, because we went a little too in depth of what a narrative means, if you get what I mean. You see what I did there, Jay? So I'm sorry, we did not create a narrative in this podcast. It's not a narrative. It's a very in-depth look at what do these words actually mean. And let's face it, in today's noise, I think in today's noise, the definition of words are being blurred.
And they're more important than ever. I think words do have meaning. And when they're used incorrectly, their meanings get lost.
And we can go over who, what, why, where, and how these are happening. But I think if you just wake up and smell the roses, wake up and what's the other? Wake up and drink some coffee? No. I think it's wake up, smell the roses. Why does it wake up, smell the roses?
No, get outside and smell the roses.
Wake up and, what's the term? Wake up and, what's the term for wake up and smell the roses, or wake up and, what's the term actually?
You're missing you're combining two different idioms.
Wake up and smell the coffee. It's time to wake up. You can see this in so many places. I would say mostly social media. It even happens in your daily life, which is okay when you're talking about narratives that are persuading you. But if you're talking about narratives like social media, politics, or anything like that, those narratives are one-sided typically, and I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. There are people like us that want you to see what the middle sees. Slow down. You don't need a narrative all the time. Yeah, we're busy, but if you really want to know what really is going on, you can't rely on someone's narrative.
It may be somebody else's narrative is just a tool to help you shape your own. Take that information and seek out an alternative view and see if they both jive or if they both come together in some point, and where do they come together at?
Whenever it's imminent.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain. Humans rely on mental shortcuts. Okay. Well, we already talked about why, really. Like why people.
Yeah,
We
emotions.
talked about it. Where. We
Where.
talked about where. When. These tactics are most often used when a communicator wants to influence perception quickly without engaging in deep analysis.
We kind of hit on that in the very beginning.
We did. Who. Well, we already talked about who. We can go into how. How each narrative trick works. Okay. Those are one of the things.
Stop and smell the roses. Wake up and smell the coffee.
There you go. That's it.
I think those are both really important little sayings. Wake up and smell the coffee. Wake up and be in reality. Be here in the now. And stop and smell the roses is take a minute. Enjoy or observe your surroundings. See what's really out there. And notice the beauty that's really all around us.
And you definitely need to know the details of a lot of things. I think skipping to a narrative, skipping to just a quick summary is like reading the back page of a book. You don't know all of the context or everything that went into it. You don't have any emotional tie to it. It's just quick response, and you make an emotion based off of what you just witnessed or read or heard.
And we're more than that. The journey is really where everything is. You don't want to skip the journey. When you go hiking in the woods, you don't start in one spot and then end 5 minutes later. You go through and you see all the sights and you feel the expressions or the emotions of what's around you. And you appreciate everything a little bit more when you get back to the end of the trail. And you have a better understanding of your surroundings at that point.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. Don't be a Nazi. Subscribe. Peace out.
Later, guys.